All right, so this week we start PowerShell. So for week 13, I have some stuff here for you. In your course documents under the PowerShell stuff, you will find PowerShell 7 for IT professionals, and I would look at the first 3 chapters. There is also this one gives you some nice snippets. Learn Windows PowerShell in a month of lunches. That's also a PDF. Now this video is really nice. It's Learn PowerShell and it looks like I have a nice typo in there. I'll have to fix that. In less than 2 hours. As you can see here, if you just want to skip through the video, they have everything broken out really nicely for you. So you can see different things like want to open the PowerShell ISE, want to learn about commandlet parameters. You can just scroll down through here. They break it out into nice chunks. So this is a very good one for that. And I suggest, rather than sitting through the whole almost 2 hours of it, you take it in like 10 to 15 minute chunks and then come back and go over that again. Because in my experience, when it comes to programming videos, the more you sit there and stare at the video, unless you're like searching through it for specific topics, the more it feels like your brain's going to bleed out your ear. So I'm really glad that I found one that has everything broken out in those nice little chunks like that. So just go ahead and click on those and take a look at the different sections here. Okay, so let me stop here and then I will go into the PowerPoint that I have for you. And this is just a simple little getting started with PowerShell that we're going to go through. All right, so what is PowerShell? We've talked about it a bit. You've seen commands and stuff on various snips and within our classes. So it is a cross-platform task automation solution made up of command line shell, a scripting language, and a configuration management framework. It runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. PowerShell is a modern command shell that includes the best features of other popular shells. As a scripting language, PowerShell is commonly used for automating management of the systems. So whenever I've seen PowerShell used, it is for automation. It is for pushing large scale jobs, like say you have batch files, a whole bunch of things that you want to do at once. You figure out how to do a script through PowerShell so that you can automate things and work them through faster. And then, or if you have another thing I've seen it done for is if you've got like an Outlook server, there are all sorts of PowerShell scripts that you can do for management for that. So it's just used. There are so many scripts out there. In fact, a lot of the network engineers that I know that have used this literally will go look out for PowerShell script 4 and then just add whatever problem they have and start looking through the scripts. So that's usually what they look for. Is I don't expect you to know every single piece of this and memorize it, because PowerShell is really nitpicky, and it's one of those ones that you want to know where to look stuff up for, and you want to know the basics of it, but you really need to know how to find things and how to turn things on first. Does that make sense to everybody? Yay, nay, I've already lost you. Okay, yes, okay, good. So what are the differences between Windows PowerShell 5 and 7? There are a few differences in the language between Windows PowerShell and then what's just regular PowerShell. The availability and behavior of PowerShell commandlets between Windows and non-Windows platforms is different, and the difference between the .NET framework and the .NET Core. The modules no longer shipped with PowerShell, and you can see these listed down here. So you just need to be aware that if you're using an older version, that there are some things that are there that may not be available later on. So, and you'll notice in this week's assignment, we have a walkthrough that shows you how to set this PowerShell up and work with it on your own computer. So, but this also talks about doing it too. So there's multiple ways to install it. The one that I suggest is Wing It for your home computer, and we talk about that on your assignment. But there's Wing It, MSI packages, zip packages, or you can even go out to the Microsoft Store. With Wing It, the command you see here is, and it's actually out in your assignment too, is Wing It install Microsoft PowerShell. And then there's a link down here as well. When you do the installation for Visual Studio Code, it actually pops that link out there for you too. Basic PowerShell console navigation and usage. So here are some super basic commands. So here's some basic, these are the navigation ones, CD. The nice thing is that a lot of these sound similar and work similar to the regular command prompt. So CD is change directory, LS, that's list, and PWD, this is the only one that when I first saw it, I thought, the first thing I thought was password, but it's not, it's print working directory. There's some aliases. So how do you use alternate names for commands and commandlets? And then to view a list of aliases, that get alias commandlet is how you look those up. Then to create an alias for a current session, you do set alias or new alias, or you can remove an alias with remove alias commandlet. So remember, there's a difference between what's called a commandlet and a command. The commands, those are what's up top. The commandlets are the ones you'll see with like the dashes and stuff in them. There are 3 core commandlets in PowerShell. Get command, so that gets all commands installed on the computer. Getting help, this displays information about the commands and concepts. It's like a man page. And then get member, this helps discover what objects, properties, and methods are available for the commands. So you remember how we talked about piping? There's the little pipe when we talked about things. Commandlets are native PowerShell commands. They can be written in any compiled .NET language. A pipeline is used to pass data between commandlets. So this is an example. Get child item, path, application log, and then you have a pipe, new item, dash path, application log. In this example, it states that if the file doesn't exist, that you need to create it. And give me just 1 second. I got to mute. I've got to answer a question real fast. Sorry about that. I have a gigantic, I'm sure you can hear it right now, package the thud that was delivered and needed to be moved around. Yeah, I muted it so that I could answer where to put stuff. So, and then while it was being moved, you heard a nice ka-thunk, and you might possibly hear that here in a second too. But anyway, so pipeline is where you pipe those two things and put them together. So next we have working with objects, and an object is a collection of data that represents an item. Thank you. It's made up of three types of data. You have your object type, and this tells what kind of object it is. Like file info represents a file object. You have its method, that's the actions that you can perform on the object, like copy to. And then its properties store information about the object, like file info has the last write time property, and those can be used as well. Like I said, I do not expect you to remember every single one of these because there is a ton of them. Okay, so super simple, basic on that. Now let's go look at some of the installation and how you get this functioning. So what you're going to need to do for Sunday, and in order to work with PowerShell, is you have to install the PowerShell extension. Now, I went and looked, and it's actually easier to work with Visual Studio Code on this one than it is the full Visual Studio. I'm not sure why that is. If you want to try and put it through Visual Studio, you can, but I went through and tried to do some stuff, and it just was much more difficult. So when I did this, as you can see, I took screenshots of everything so that you can see exactly how you can get in there and do this. Let me open up code so you can. So as you can see here, when you open up your file preferences extensions, you can see where I have that now. But when you first go and look for it, what you want is that Microsoft one right here on the top. Okay. And when you install that, let me stop sharing it so you can see the screenshots that I took over here. When you first install that, it'll give you a notification that pops up that says, hey, if you're going to use this with the command line prompt, you'll see that nice little getting started with PowerShell over on the other side. Then you're going to need to do some stuff over here. Well, if you click on that install PowerShell 7, it will bring you over to this right here. And wing it, remember how we were talking about that, is the way that you want to go. And this is the code that you're going to want to use. So, I forgot Blackboard always throws you completely out and you have to go all the way back in. So what you have to do is you need to open a elevated command prompt. So search for command prompt, right click, and do that run as administrator. And the reason I'm recording this and talking to you about it is that way during this, if you guys have questions, you can ask me, but also you can rewind the video and go, okay, that's what she meant when you're working on this later. So anyway, okay, we get an elevated command prompt. And then once it's open with that run as administrator option, you type that following command right there, wing it, search, Microsoft PowerShell, okay? Then as soon as you do that, it will ask if you agree, and you can see the little screenshot here with the source agreement terms. All you do is type yes, hit enter. And for me, it just went bing and was done. And that was how fast it was. You may have to close down and restart Visual Studio Code. I did not, but I have read that, excuse me, it's really not super hard. I mean, there's a lot of really, PowerShell is as hard as you want to make it. It is made for automation, so you can make it super, super complicated, but you can also start out with very simple stuff, which is what I did here. So, okay, here's your installation. Now, one thing that you need to know is that when you first run PowerShell scripts, you'll get an error message because there's a thing that is on your system that is not, it's called the execution policy, and it is turned off so that PowerShell scripts are not allowed to run unless you run the command that turns them on. So how do you do that? All right, we open an elevated PowerShell command window. So you search for, all I had to do was start typing in PowerShell, and it brought up that Windows PowerShell that you see there with the little blue. And I put run as administrator, and you may not have to do everything as an elevated version, but I found that every time I try to not, I end up having to do it anyway. So that's why I went ahead and put, hey, while you're doing this, let's go ahead and do it as run as administrator so that it wouldn't be an issue. Okay, so run as administrator, and then you do the command set dash, and these are case sensitive, set dash execution policy space remote signed. And that turns on so that you can execute PowerShell scripts. And when you create your PowerShell scripts in Visual Studio Code and you do the debug or run, it actually runs it. Now, if you don't do that, it will not run it. So after you do this code, it will ask you, like it did with the up here with installing PowerShell, it'll say, are you sure you want to do that? Basically, and then Y and enter. And you can see my little snip down here. Just Y. You don't need to hit any of the other letters. So just hit Y and hit enter, and that's it. So there you go. You will be able to run your PowerShell scripts. So I want you to do something super simple for your first script. I want you to do what's called a lot of people call it the hello world, but don't do hello world because I'm using that as an example. I want you to put something else. It can be whatever you want it to be in between those two quotes. And we're going to do a write host script. So that's what I want you to do. Let me go over to my, let me close out of this.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So on Visual Studio Code, I installed that PowerShell extension, and it did the install, but I didn't get any sort of pop-up with you know, the whole process that you just went through. I didn't see any of that. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if I don't need to do all of that aside from enabling the execution policy, but
if you didn't, okay, so when was it just the extension you installed?
yes.
Is it possible that you have PowerShell installed on your computer from a previous project?
I don't think so.
Okay. That link that you saw, let me reshare the content here. If you do not get this get started with PowerShell over in the other, you can click on that. Do you see where it says, if you click this, there's the link right there. You can click that link to open up this so that you can get the command and you can run that through your command prompt without having to do this.
Okay, and then
So,
I'll just follow
yeah,
instructions as normal.
exactly. So what the whole point of that link was just so you could get this command right here.
Cool.
So as long as you have that command, I just wanted to let people know if it popped that up over there on the side, not to panic, that that's all it was telling you to do, was giving you that little command. Yes, you can do self-destruct. Yes, you can do goodbye world. You can do whatever you want to in between those two quotes. Now let me get over to this. Okay. So with mine, let me close this out. So let's create a new one. We want to do a new text file, okay? And we want to do select a language, and then it'll pop that up, and then you type in, you should start to type that in, and you should see PowerShell. Are you guys being able, is it showing you all this okay? Yay, nay? Yes. Now, as Steve said, you really do need to save this. So when you save it, you should see that PS1. Mine's in the, it just, because I had everything set because of that examp thing that we had, I had a folder in there. So I just said, I'll create a scripts folder and stick it in there. So I'm going to call this test1 and save it. And what you want to do for the assignment is create a, hold on, let me go. Write host is what you do. And this is the nice thing. You should start to see that stuff pop up. And write host, and then whatever you want between those right there. Okay. Yes, I think you could probably do that if you wanted to. And then once you get that in there, you will want to run the, hit that play there. And you see how it runs down here at the very bottom. You'll see it print out. If you see at the very bottom down here in the terminal, it says this is a test. So it wrote to the host, this is a test. And if it does that and it doesn't pop any error messages, ta-da, you did it right. So that's what I mean about it is super simple. And that's the nice thing about this Visual Studio Code also, is you noticed when I was writing it, look at all those. Look at all that. You can do all sorts of things. So there are a ton of things that you can do. But for this one, you can write whatever you want in there. Okay.
Such a good book.
I'm just glad somebody got the joke. Okay.
I mean, towels, they're really the perfect thing.
Thanks for all the fish. Yep. Okay. So does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, I think, Gwen, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this. And I think you guys, most people get terrified of PowerShell, but that's because they only see the super advanced stuff. They don't see how to begin it. So this is how you begin it. So this is what we're going to start with. Okay. So that's all for today. For the lecture portion of today. Let me stop share here. Yeah, you guys will know because we have 3 weeks of this. I wanted to dedicate more to this one because as cybersecurity people, you're going to have a lot of crossover with networks, a lot of crossover with automated tasks. So I wanted us to be able to dive into this one as deep as you guys wanted to. So we have 3 weeks to play with it. So there we go for today. Let me stop the recording here and then I'll talk to you guys about homework.